The morning sun filtered gently through the hospital blinds, casting long shadows across the quiet corridor. A young nurse, Emma, tightened her ponytail and adjusted the strap of her ID card nervously. She was new, a fresh face in one of the city's most prestigious private hospitals. Her first day felt like a test she couldn't afford to fail. Emma wasn't just shy, she was deeply reserved, the kind of person who preferred listening over speaking. After losing her parents young, she'd grown up learning that silence was safer than attention. But what people didn't know was that her silence came with strength, the kind that notices what others miss. That morning, her assignment was unusual. She'd been asked to attend to a special patient, an elderly woman recovering from a mild stroke. The only note on the chart said, "Patient is hearing impaired. Be patient and gentle." Emma exhaled and knocked softly before entering room 508. The woman inside was elegant, white hair pinned neatly, soft eyes that carried decades of unspoken stories. Her name tag read Mrs. Carter. "Good morning," Emma said slowly, her voice gentle. When there was no reply, she smiled warmly and lifted her hands. With graceful precision, she began to sign. "Hello, I'm your nurse today. My name is Emma." The woman's eyes widened in surprise. Then they softened into the warmest smile Emma had seen all week. "Mrs. Carter," immediately signed back, her movements slightly shaky but expressive. "You know sign language?" Emma nodded. "A little," she signed. "I learned because my little brother couldn't hear when we were kids." Tears glistened in Mrs. Carter's eyes as she patted Emma's hand affectionately. From that moment, an invisible bond began, two souls connected not by sound, but by understanding. What Emma didn't know was that Mrs. Carter wasn't just any patient. She was the mother of Alexander Carter, the powerful CEO of Carter Medical Group, the hospital's largest donor and the man everyone spoke about with both fear and admiration. Alexander was a man who didn't believe in emotion. To him, life was business, precise, predictable, and disciplined. He'd built an empire on logic, never once letting sentiment interfere with success. But all that began to shift the day he saw a nurse signing lovingly to his mother through a glass window. From his office on the top floor, he often looked down at the ward where his mother stayed. He was used to watching her sit alone, staring out of the window, lost in a world where words couldn't reach her. But that morning, she was smiling, laughing silently. Her hands danced in the air with joy. And beside her stood the shy nurse, Emma. He didn't know her name yet. But something in that moment stopped him cold. It wasn't just curiosity, it was connection. Later that day, when Alexander visited his mother, she kept gesturing excitedly, pointing toward the door, signing something so fast he could barely follow. "Slow down, Mom," he said softly, using the signs he knew. "What are you saying?" She smiled, touching her heart and then signing the word, Angel. Alexander frowned. "Angel." She nodded again, smiling toward the door. When Emma entered to check on her, Mrs. Carter's face lit up like the sun. Emma froze, noticing Alexander, tall, sharply dressed, his presence commanding. "Good afternoon, Mr. Carter," she greeted, her tone shy but respectful. He gave a short nod. "You must be the new nurse." "Yes, sir. My mother seems very fond of you," he said, a rare softness in his voice. Emma smiled nervously. "She's wonderful. I try to talk to her in her language." His brows lifted slightly. "You know sign language?" "A little. It's something I learned for someone I loved." He didn't respond, but the way he looked at her changed. For the first time in years, Alexander found himself speechless, not because he couldn't think of what to say, but because no words seemed enough. Over the next few days, he began visiting more often. Sometimes under the excuse of checking on his mother's progress, sometimes just to watch that quiet girl who made his mother smile. He'd catch glimpses of her reading to Mrs. Carter, translating every sentence with patience, or helping her walk down the hall, her touch gentle and kind. The hospital staff began whispering, "Why is the CEO spending so much time in Ward 508? But Alexander didn't care. Something about Emma disarmed him, her humility, her kindness, her quiet strength. One evening, after most staff had gone home, Emma stayed late to check Mrs. Carter's vitals. She didn't realize Alexander was still there, standing quietly in the doorway, watching. "Do you ever rest?" he asked finally. Emma jumped slightly, turning toward him. I was just finishing." He stepped closer, his voice low. "You've done more for my mother than anyone in years." "Thank you." She smiled softly. She just needed someone to listen. "Even silence speaks, Mr. Carter, if someone's willing to hear it." He looked at her like he was hearing that kind of wisdom for the first time. After that night, their conversations became longer, though always respectful and subtle. He learned she lived alone, worked extra shifts, and still sent money to support children with hearing disabilities. One day, during a routine therapy session, Mrs. Carter suddenly fell unconscious. The monitor beeped rapidly. Emma called for help, performing CPR until the doctors arrived. Her hands didn't shake, her focus didn't waver. Hours later, Mrs. Carter stabilized, alive, thanks to Emma. When Alexander arrived, his face was pale. "Who helped her?" he demanded. "She did," one doctor said, nodding at Emma. Alexander turned to her, his eyes filled with something he hadn't felt in years: gratitude, fear, admiration, and something deeper. "You saved my mother." Emma shook her head softly. "She saved herself. I just helped." He didn't know why, but those words struck something in him. That night, he sat by his mother's bedside while she slept, thinking about the nurse who risked everything without asking for credit. Over the next few weeks, as Mrs. Carter recovered, she began secretly plotting something. She adored Emma, and she could see what her son couldn't admit, that he had already fallen in love. When Alexander visited one morning, Mrs. Carter signed mischievously, "Invite her for dinner." He hesitated. "Mom." She raised an eyebrow, signing firmly, "Dinner." That evening, Emma received a note, a formal invitation from Alexander Carter himself. Her hands trembled slightly as she read it. Dinner at the Carter mansion. She almost didn't go. What could a simple nurse say to a man like him? But when she thought of Mrs. Carter's kind face, she couldn't refuse. When Emma arrived, dressed simply yet elegantly, Alexander couldn't take his eyes off her. For the first time, his home, always cold and empty, felt alive. Over dinner, she spoke little, but every word carried sincerity. He found himself opening up, about his work, his loneliness, his late father, and how he'd built walls too high for anyone to climb. Emma smiled softly. "Sometimes walls don't protect us, Mr. Carter. They just keep love out." He stared at her, realizing she was right. As days turned into weeks, their bond deepened. Mrs. Carter fully recovered and watched them with quiet joy. She'd often sign things like, "She's the one, Alex." But not everyone was happy. Some of the hospital board members whispered that the CEO was distracted, that his reputation was at risk over a nurse from a poor background. When Emma overheard one such conversation, her heart broke. She didn't want to be the reason someone questioned his position. That night, she resigned. The next morning, Alexander stormed into her small apartment. "Why?" he demanded, his voice shaking. Because you deserve someone who won't make people talk, she whispered. You have a name to protect. I only ever wanted to help your mother, not hurt your reputation. He stepped closer, his voice softer now. Emma, I don't care what they say. Her eyes welled up. You should. He shook his head. No, because for the first time in my life, I've found someone who listens, not to my money, not my name, but my silence. She looked up at him, trembling. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you. Tears streamed down her cheeks as he gently took her hands, the same hands that once signed words of comfort to his mother, now trembling in his. From that day, the world began to change for both of them. Emma returned to the hospital, this time as part of a new foundation, one Alexander launched in her honor, supporting children with hearing loss. At the opening ceremony, Mrs. Carter stood proudly beside them, tears of joy glistening as Emma signed to her, "Thank you for bringing us together." And as Alexander watched the woman he loved signing to the mother who'd taught him the language of silence, he realized something profound, that sometimes, love doesn't need words at all. Because the heart always understands. Sometimes the most beautiful connections are formed in silence, where hearts speak louder than words. If this story touched your soul, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional stories that remind us kindness, compassion, and love still exist in this world.